Right. Hello, world culture students. It is I again, Mr. Ursola, back at it again with our next lesson video, which is going to be about South Asia monsoons. Again, we started our Unit 8, South Asia, last Friday for the virtual day with our geography lesson. And then this should be technically the actually second actual lesson on Unit 8, South Asia. Okay, getting into it. With monsoons, you might be asking yourself, well, what exactly is a monsoon? You might have heard the term before, but essentially what a monsoon is it is a seasonal wind in South and Southeast Asia, so the areas of our unit. Now, monsoons are going to blow from the southwest between the months of May through September, which tend to bring a lot of rain. Okay, this is known as a wet monsoon. There's also another monsoon known as a dry monsoon that blows in from the northeast between October through April. And again, this is specifically for South and Southeast Asia. So anytime you see the word monsoon, you should know automatically that it is a seasonal wind that tends to bring rain during these months, during the wet monsoon, in South and Southeast Asia. Okay, and then obviously in the other months that are not the wet monsoon, it's going to be known as the dry monsoon from the northeast. Now, an important distinction you need to know is that a monsoon is not a storm. It is not a storm. Okay, a monsoon, again, is that seasonal wind that tends to bring with it a lot of storms and rainfall. Okay, almost like a culmination or a cause of storms in a lot of areas of South Asia. Okay, so here on these two maps, they're going to show us the wet monsoon in South Asia that tends to happen around the months of, or the summer months. The actual monsoon winds here are visualized with the arrows. And then the other months, so the winter months and the beginning of the spring months, are going to be the dry monsoon winds coming from the northeast. Okay, so wet monsoon winds coming in from the southwest here during the summer. And then during the winter and spring months, it's going to come in from, or the dry monsoon winds are going to come in from the northeast here. Okay, and again, all this is going to be South Asia, all right? India here being the biggest country in South Asia. We're going to talk a lot about that in following lessons. Okay, so some questions that we're going to go ahead and just take a moment to either answer by yourself at home virtually or in class. Just some map reading questions are going to help us practice with actually reading different types of maps, this one being a precipitation or a rainfall map. Okay, you see all the pretty colors here in both maps, and they're going to be indicative of the amount of rainfall in millimeters for each region here. Okay, so like the area around the middle part of India during the wet monsoon is going to have quite a bit of rainfall, around 1,200 to 600, even going a little bit lower up until like 300 to 600 in those parts of India. Okay, so you really just have to look at the colors here and see where they correlate with the colors here on the map legend to see what the precipitation level is. Okay, so first question to go ahead and answer either by yourself or in class. First one is, how much rainfall does the country of Bhutan get during the wet monsoon? Okay, so the country of Bhutan is going to be this little one right here. So using the map legend and just your map reading skills, how much rainfall does this country of Bhutan here in South Asia, how much does it get during the wet monsoon? Okay, so hopefully y'all had a moment to pause and think that over. So the answer to that, how much rainfall does Bhutan get during the wet monsoon, is going to be quite a lot. So above 1,200, so over 1,200 millimeters of rainfall during the wet monsoon. Okay, so second question, how much rainfall occurs in the southwestern part of Sri Lanka? So Sri Lanka is going to be this little island area here off of the coast of India, the southern coast of India. So that's Sri Lanka here. Okay, so the question again is, how much rainfall during the wet monsoon season, how much rainfall does the country of Sri Lanka get in the southwestern part of it? Okay, in the southwestern part of Sri Lanka, how much rainfall does it get? All right, and after discussion or thinking about that, and if you came up with 600 to 1,200 millimeters of rainfall, then you'd be correct. So you can go ahead and pat yourself on the back for that one. So the third and the final question, annually, which means year round, so you have to be looking at both maps here. So year-round, which side of India's coast, west or east, gets more rainfall? Okay, so remember, India is this giant country here in both maps. And the question again is, which side of India's coast, so the coast being all along here, both sides, which side of India's coast gets more rainfall? Is that going to be the western coast side or the eastern coast side year-round? Okay, so you might have to do some little mental math here with addition. So year-round, is it the west part of India's coast or the eastern part of India's coast that's going to get the most rainfall? What do you think year-round? Okay, hopefully you gave that some thought. And if you ended up coming up with the western coastline for India getting more rainfall annually, you'd be correct. And the easy way to look at that is seeing here, there's a whole bunch of over 1,200 millimeters of rainfall constantly around the areas of the western coast here in India. Whereas over here, it's quite a bit less. And honestly, it's the same for the most part on the other side as well. And there's just going to be a whole lot more rainfall that occurs on the western part of India's coast, the west side, versus the eastern part of India's coast. Okay, so keep that in mind, and hopefully you sharpened up your map reading skills here with those few questions. Also, before we move on, just a question, why, okay, so kind of get into that critical thinking aspect, why do you think the western part of India's coastline gets more rainfall yearly or annually compared to its eastern part or the eastern coastline here in India? Okay, so just a little food for thought there. Okay, so moving on, we're talking about specifically India's monsoons, kind of like what we're talking about with the map. So in India, monsoon season does begin in June and spreads heavy rain up until the month of September. So pretty much during the summer months, it's going to be a lot of heavy rainfall in India. Now, monsoons are both a blessing and a curse. That means there's a lot of positives and negatives for India, and honestly, a lot of the other South Asian countries as well. So farmers rely on the rain to grow crops, and it's also used to generate electricity. So those are two good positives that come from monsoon rains in India. Okay, so lots of rainfall means lots of water for the crops to grow, and lots of rainfall also means that people are able to use water for like, damming it up, and they're able to constantly filter that water and, kind of have it flow and generate electricity. So those are positives. Now, here in this last bullet point, it's going to be talking about the negatives. So unfortunately, monsoons also cause heavy floods where the rivers overflow and cause mass destruction and spread of waterborne diseases. Okay, so there tends to be a lot of, negatives that come from monsoon winds and rainfall, mainly being the risk of heavy flooding. Okay, so you can just imagine the dangers of constant flooding waters, especially when you start getting into the aspects of waterborne diseases like cholera, where if there's a river that is very dirty and it has cholera in it, well, if it overflows and it's flowing into the town and, destroying all the buildings and people are getting basically, having to swim in it and they're exposed to that disease cholera, then they're going to end up, contracting it. Okay, on top of the fact that the flood waters are going to be ruining their houses, their cars, their property, what have you. Okay, so again, India monsoons, or honestly monsoons just in general in South Asia, they have their positives, their good things, and their negatives, they're very bad things. All right. Okay, so next few slides here are going to be getting into actual images of floods in India that have been caused by those monsoon rains. Okay, so here, I don't know exactly where in India this is, but it is going to be in India. You'll see that a river, I want to assume that the river probably was like around this area here, but because the heavy rainfall that was brought about by the wet monsoon during the summer months, most likely made the river overflow, and it's just a complete disaster for not just the earth and the ground, picking up all that soil around it, but also just the living quarters, these houses that these Indian people had along that river line there. Okay, it's just way too much water, way too much flooding, and it's taking away the foundation that is holding their houses, on the ground. So a lot of damaged property. Okay, and again, you could even imagine that if there's diseased water in there, the flood water or the flooding brought about by the monsoon rain is just going to, worsen it and make it more likely that those people are going to contract that sickness in the water. Okay, so flooding. So whenever the monsoon flooding, as we just saw, is too severe, rivers are going to overflow their banks and water just, constantly sweeps over the land. It's kind of like you're filling a water bottle too much. It's just going to overflow. This can cause airports to close, buildings to collapse, power lines to fall, waterborne illnesses to spread, and animals and humans to possibly drown. Okay, so just way more of those negatives. There are those bad consequences that come about from the monsoon rains flooding those rivers. Okay. All right, so again, just another image here of an Indian building that is succumbing to the horrible effects of flooding caused by monsoon rains. Okay, so the flood waters are taking away the foundation, they're taking away the dirt, the earth that is under the building, and then obviously if there's nothing for the building to be on, it's going to just crumble underneath its own weight. Okay, so there's very important for it to stay dry and in place. That way the building is able to maintain its structure and it doesn't fall. It's kind of like yanking the bottom Jenga block off of your Jenga tower, and then it's all going to fall down because it lacks that foundation, like what we see here. So then for this last slide, just again, another pretty horrifying depiction of the dangers of the floodwaters. It's a still picture, but then you'll notice that the actual waters themselves in the picture are quite blurry, okay, which means that they're going probably very fast. So it doesn't even matter if you're a good swimmer or not. If you know how to swim, waters that are going this quickly and to this degree, this volume, this amount of water, there really isn't going to be a good chance that you're probably going to honestly survive this if you were to be swept up in these monsoon floodwaters, okay? All right, so that is gonna go ahead, should be the last slide, yep. So that's gonna go ahead and wrap up our lesson, our very brief lesson here over monsoons in South Asia and just South Asia in general. So today's folder, there's gonna be a couple of videos. The kind of very short videos are like 1-2 minutes long, and they're going to just kind of wrap up and sort of go over more in depth about what exactly is a monsoon, and also some nice visualizations here in the video about what exactly it looks like in South Asia. Okay, and also don't forget there is an assignment, 10 questions in the folder for today. That's going to be a knowledge check over all this monsoon talk that we've had for today in the videos. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than you're probably used to in a lot of the knowledge checks. Okay, it's not just oh, look at the notes and then just get the right answer. No, there's going to be at least a little bit of thinking, a little bit of using your noodle involved in this knowledge check. So please, please, please make sure that you are taking your time and getting through it using your notes. And you get 2 tries on it, but please make sure that you are doing your best because it is going to be a formative grade. All right, so that being said, I wish you all a good day, good afternoon, what have you, whenever you're watching this. And I will see you all next time. All right, bye-bye.